So I think what I wanted to talk about is related to the issue of how to provide fixes and patches to existing SDK versions. Adanas, is that so?
Actually, I'm very pleasantly surprised how everybody was helping with my issue, and like on the other hand, I'm a bit disappointed that the bug was that simple. So like it's not something that's worth discussing on this meeting. So like it looks like it will be in the next SDK, thanks to Gil, and yeah, it's just you know, like the way our timelines are organized, like it's a combination of bad luck and like an imperfect process, I think, because like our delivery date is tomorrow, the deadline is tomorrow, and like the SDK is released today. We have only one day for testing and finding this issue, and it slipped really. Like it's a combination of copy paste error and a few confusing things in the app, and I know that if we had a QA, like not a QA who will check in the end, but like checking every day what's going on, then they would probably have caught it. And also, if we were doing behavior-driven development, and if we had specified the acceptance criteria, then it would have passed. With test-driven development, it would have been a bit difficult because the problematic logic is in different unrelated places, and it is not like it is not very easy to test it with unit tests. So I'm talking about premium content badging, which we have for videos on demand. But we don't have for live streams. So if we have program cells and the program is one of a channel, and this channel is free, or if it's not free, so if it's not free, we want to display a premium content badge. So I actually have the app installed, and maybe I can show you the feature instead of explaining. But like really, I'm impressed. It's just like the bad feeling of like happening last moment. It's a bit stressful, but like we are not passing the deadline still, so it's not totally bad. And like except for this premium content badging, I was investigating something for the client, and like I was disappointed because it turned out to be a human error. So I spent 2 weeks on that, not 2 weeks, 2 days on that, and like except for that, I can't think of anything else. Just these two things. So the custom server, we also had some issues with the backend, and like they were resolved, I think. At least the client is accepting the resolution. To me, sometimes it's not like it doesn't work perfectly, but like it's sometimes. So like if you can see that triangle at the top of the video on demand, the empty one. Yeah, so this is the premium content badge, and then here that's the channel, and it has a premium content badge as well. This is template 25. Yeah, and the bug was that this wasn't actually, this was being displayed for everything, so this was the bug. All right, so that's me.
Okay, but you said that Gil helped you, and in the last minute you were able to insert the fix for it?
Yeah, he just cherry picked my. I actually didn't verify that he did, but he thought he would, and I think he did. Cherry picked my commit on Android generic app, and I rebased the release branch from Masta on Zap Android. So like when he runs the scripts for the new SDK, these things should be there. I'm really impressed. By the way, like I couldn't have expected more. I've seen how such situations have been handled before, and in my case, it was nothing like this. It was just very smooth and like understanding, and I'm really impressed. Good job.
Okay. Thanks, Adanas, and thanks, Gil. And maybe, Ran, maybe we can take it into a more generalized discussion about providing last-minute fixes. We've talked in the past about our release cycles, and there have been weekly release cycles, and they might turn, or they're in a phase of turning into bi-weekly release cycles. And there is a process of creating SDK version, closing it, like first a code freeze that happens every Friday or every other Friday, starting soon. And then there are a couple of days. This is when the code freezes and staging branch basically is updated with the latest commit that is part of the code freeze. Right, Ran? I'm just describing the process, and I want to talk generally about these kind of things, and maybe take it after. Yeah.
So we taught our clients that if we make an SDK, they couldn't release before Tuesday, and they know this already. But if now we have to teach them that it will be every other Tuesday, they need to know well in advance.
Yeah, generally, so we are the reason for changing it from a weekly release cycle into bi-weekly release cycle is to give us more time for testing. This was due to many cases in the past where an SDK was released without proper testing, and it was found out that changes that was done in one region would introduce breaking changes into other regions. And it happened quite a lot, and we realized that it might be related to the fact that we don't allocate enough time for testing within the regions, so that every region can have enough time to take the SDK, implement it into one or two apps, other than what is being sent to Applause, and verify that nothing breaks, because Applause first don't test all of our apps, and they cannot catch everything that breaks in the SDK. Sometimes they might miss things, they don't focus on everything.
I think that this is personally, I think that this is not going to solve the problem with the testing.
This is one part, adding some more time for testing. But anyway, let's discuss, even if we're talking about the weekly procedure, okay? We have a code freeze on Friday, then a staging branch is created. From this moment forward, every new commit is done into the dev SDK, will not be part of this version. So if there is a release that is based on something that should be part of the latest SDK, the last commit should be before the Friday, the week before the release. Everybody is clear of that, right? Everybody understands that. The idea of code freeze. Now, there might be cases where after the code freeze, problems are detected, bugs are detected. So we need a way to understand how we introduce fixes into an SDK that is about to be closed. Just like happened in your case. You have a case where you saw an issue only after the SDK has been code free. But you needed it as part of the SDK. So we're kind of in a mode of a hot fix, even if the SDK was not formally released. That's what we're saying.
Yeah. So what we will do soon Basically, we are missing one state in the current way that we are working. We're missing the state of staging in the system. So we have it in as a, we have it as a like a branch and as a concept that after the code freeze, everything that was on dev is merged to staging. Then it goes through QA. But we're missing one state in the system that is called staging to indicate that this SDK is currently under testing. And I don't think that the right terminology is calling it a hotfix. A hotfix is a bug that is on production. So it means that you have something that is already released, that was already released, and you want to deploy a patch on it, to apply a patch on it.
Yeah.
In that case, there are two options. In the scenario that Atanas was having, or that we have on basically, we need to understand if the bug, it's like a flow chart. We need to understand if the bug is a blocker or non-blocker. If it's a non-blocker, we just move on with the regular process, and as we are on continuous deployment mode, it will be fixed for the next release. If we need it and it's a blocker, then we need to apply the patch on staging. One thing important is that once this is done, that basically you need to check out from the staging branch, create the fix, and deploy it on staging, and then making sure that you're rebasing dev to staging so that you get the commit at the same moment, and staging and the development branch are not diverge.
Ran, the problem is that sometimes the fix is already on dev.
So it's not a problem. You cherry pick from dev, and you make sure that you rebase, and you make sure that they are aligned. The important thing that after everything that you apply on staging, staging cannot be ahead of dev. Staging always need to be either equal or behind development. Cannot be ahead. That's the only thing. Doesn't matter. You want to do cherry pick. I'm not talking now about that. I'm using terminology of Git, but doesn't matter. Do whatever command of Git that is needed to be done in order for the branches to be aligned. And what we are currently missing is the state of staging in ZAP, in the system. For example, you figured out that you need to add a new key for that is like a new key to the SDK that is already being code freezed, and you need to also add a code. So we're missing one state, and we will soon solve this issue. Regarding the releases of every 2 weeks, we are thinking about two options now. I don't know, we haven't decided. This is why we haven't announced. And of course, like Atana said, it's something that needs to be communicated ahead to the customers. It's not that we are saying from tomorrow, we are releasing every 2 weeks. It will be, of course, communicated, but we're thinking of other options. It's not necessarily going to be that. There might be another process that an SDK will be released on a daily basis. We don't know. We're checking the options, but currently there is not really an optimal situation, but we try to make the best, to find the best solution that will fit the territories. It's not that I want to force something that has no connection to reality. I want to force something that will allow us to deliver quality and the time frames that the customer are able to work with. So it's not yet decided, Atanas. It's something that we talked about because we think that it will allow us a further QAing. It will 2 weeks. I mean, it will allow the teams to have some more time to manage this kind of issues. Like your code freeze won't be 2 days before the release, it will be more, and then you have some time to adjust if you find bugs and stuff like that. Again, not a bulletproof solution. We haven't yet decided as a fact. We're thinking about different solution for that. Another thing that we soon will deploy is related to hot fixes of production. It's Tzarfati, we talked about it. Currently, when you want to do a hotfix, a real hotfix on production version, the only possibility that you have is to do it from the latest production, which is clearly not the absolute truth, because each customer has its own production state. So one is sitting on that commit and the other one is sitting on that commit, and each one of the customer has its own production. So this is very delicate situation because basically what will happen is that you will deploy from a branch, and you need to be responsible to apply this branch to do all the Git commands that are needed in order to apply the patch on the regular Git flow. That's another thing. That's related to that.
Okay. Good.
I want to talk about another thing, if I'm allowed. It's very generic, but I want to talk about it a little bit. It's about a little bit developers' responsibilities in comparison to project manager responsibilities. So I see often that that project managers are touching parts in ZAP that are for developers. For example, everything that is related to an SDK. Everything like creating a new key, like uploading a default asset, and all these kind of things. So I want to do a small simulation, a short simulation about what we would have done if we don't have ZAP and we only have an SDK. So basically creating a key, doesn't matter, style, a text, whatever. What happens that is the flow is to go to the code and to add the key in the strings XML file or in the styles XML or whatever. And in the code itself to find a place to bind the view to the code. So as you wouldn't expect a project manager to do that, I would like us to understand that we shouldn't expect project managers to add this key on the SDK level in ZAP. It's not something that they should do. They shouldn't be defining the keys, and they shouldn't have this impact on the entire SDK without really understanding what they do. Because there is, if I can talk in a higher level, I would say that the SDK was forced on us more than we would like to have it. Like if I could just remove this entire part of SDK, I would have done it. But we couldn't. We took an existing app and we tried to find a way to build the system on top of this this mechanism. And this is something that anyone that is not a developer should not be able to do. The only reason that the project manager or whomever is not a developer has permission to this section is because in Africa, so we have permissions issues that is not under my domain, that everybody is an admin, which is very bad, but it's not, everybody that is internal Applicas worker is an admin in all our SCMSs. So this is something that shouldn't happen. So I please ask you, the responsibility, and I know that it's easy to throw everything on the project manager because it's there, it's in the system and whatever, but it's not anyone but the developer responsibility to apply things on the SDK level like we are doing it in the code. So please, I ask you, I don't want to see a project manager touching anything that is related to SDK. They know what is the process of doing it, but they don't understand what's the meaning behind it. Why are things are changing and what is the effect that is added. So when you're adding a code, that is added into the SDK level, which is the modular app or the SDK or any of our modules, please make sure that you are responsible also to do the same action in Zap system. Another small comment, I see a lot of recently creation of new dev SDKs that are completely corrupted, like using an SDK for specific app version without basing it on all their apps, giving it a name, or not giving it a name and not announcing it, not putting any notes, and then this causing people that are system users to choose the latest created SDK, which is corrupted. And what happens then is that the app doesn't have keys, or the app is not pointing on the right place, or whatever, etc., etc. So please understand that every small, it's very similar as adding code to the SDK. Every change that you're doing affects all our customers and all our users of the system. So please take responsibility of everything that we should take responsibility of everything that we're doing in any level that we're doing it, and specifically on everything that is developers sections in Zap. Any questions or comments related to that?
Are there more examples other than adding a key or adding an asset? I mean,
adding a key, adding default assets, changing default style. There are not a lot of actions that you can do in the SDK level. A part of changing the pointer to the code, to the AAR, the branch, and adding keys on asset styles and localization. These are the actions. These are very basic actions. But I see a lot of these actions that are not done by a developer. Sometimes maybe it's a unwanted initiative by others, and sometimes it's the developer that is telling, yeah, just go create this key on the SDK level, blah, blah, blah. Or just upload the default asset or whatever. And then you upload default asset, suddenly an app that didn't have this asset or had some other and expected another default asset now gets, I don't know, an orange button inside of the sales type or this kind of stuff. So it's 100% responsibility of developer. Everything that is related to the SDK sections are 100% developers. The project managers should only deal with their projects, with their apps. So, and it's also related to not only project managers, it's also related to production assistants and all this kind of thing. It's not their responsibility. It's the easiest way to throw it to them, but it's not. It's not their responsibility. So please try to avoid it.
okay.
Here, for example, I have now, if you will go to the audit section, you can see different asset keys that were created by a project manager. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. 20 assets, 20 keys were added yesterday to an SDK by a project manager. It means that now this is when I started my conversation, I haven't seen this. It's like an absurd. It cannot happen. And I think it's in the Israeli team, and it's very important to, Tzafat, if you can help me communicate it to them.
Okay.
Because I clearly don't get it.
Okay.
I
will.
Sorry?
Too bad that they are not here, but I will deliver the message.
Yeah. It's like something that is a must. Okay. Thank you. That's on my side.
Okay. Let's move on to talking about current tasks.
Mm-hmm.
What's new? Honey, how's it going? Honey.
Sorry, hi. So I've been working on the inner pair. Actually, I might have a question. So in order to implement the online pair, I did some extension to the inner pair in general. And then I needed to use a flag, a flag sort of means the current player is in on holding state. So I had two ways to implement it. One of them is to add a method, set state method to the interface, to the player interface. And the other way is to implement it just in the default wrapper player, which is just a Applicaster player. So what we usually doing, I mean, if I add a new method to the interface, so I needed to make sure all the player plugins implemented this method. So usually what you do.
So the question is how to extend an existing interface?
Yes. And what cases it's necessary to do that?
Obviously, if we're adding it on the interface level, there is no way of introducing such a change without breaking existing implementations.
Mm-hmm.
But
I know in
you
iOS you can do like an optional implementation for a method in the interface.
No, but why not just creating a new interface and adding it to whomever needs it? Like, I think that this will be the right approach. Like, create another interface that adding this. If you know I'm sorry that I keep on going back to this very computer science thing. That if you know the solid principles, there is something that's called interface segregation, I think, something like that. If you can divide your interfaces, it would be better. And then you add another interface to whomever is needing it. And you solve your problem. You're not breaking anything.
Okay.
I think that this is how I would approach it. On another way, I would think that I'm not sure, but sometimes we might think of using abstract rather than an interface, and it might solve us some issues.
Yeah.
But it's very dependent on your situation. What I would do in order not to break and not to force the break, I would create another interface and implement this interface as well, unless you want to force the break, and then it's another issue. Sometimes you want to force a break, but I don't know.
It's not the case.
I don't know what's the case. Yeah.
Can I just add something?
Of course.
On the top of that? So like, we have an interface player. We don't want to split it into play, and like playable player and playable poser. So we don't want it to be artificial normally. So if it's a player, it must play and pause. So it makes sense to keep it in the same interface. Maybe those who created the interface only thought that there would be a play method but not pause. So I think pause should be added, even if this will break.
In that case, yeah. I'm saying in general, in the case that you want to break, you want to break. It's legitimate in some moments. If this is a method that you will always want someone to implement. then yes, I agree.
Okay. So that should be all.
Thank you. Javier, you want to?
Sure.
Maybe
Someone Yeah. So besides working on some small fixes to Colorado, I have been dealing with two issues that I see with the UI builder. One of them is, I don't think it's related to the UI builder. The first one is the live drawer on the Android app is not showing up for us. And it seems to be configured correctly. And I verified that it's working on iOS. I was just hoping anybody that's familiar with that live drawer could at least point to me where that gets initialized or something like that. Maybe we could talk about it after this, but that's one of the issues I'm working on. And the other one, I've noticed that we have some type of like recycling issue with the list where some images just won't load. And if you go through the image loading sequence, it does load it, does get the correct drawable, you could inspect it, it assigns it to the image view, and then it just somehow doesn't ever display. And it could happen anywhere. It could happen at the top of the list, the middle, the bottom. There's no pattern to it. And if you forcefully take the URL of that image and make all of them that image, they all load except the one that's supposed to take the image. So it's some type of recycling issue or race condition, or I'm not sure. So I'm dealing with that as well.
Okay, this sounds very similar to something that we have in one of our apps. I'm not sure if it was only iOS and also Android. I think it was iOS. In Zappen, we had a similar issue where there are a lot of images and one single image decides not to be rendered. It might be loaded, it might be taken into the end, but not rendered on the screen. And I think it was in iOS, but I think also they reported it on Android. So if you have any idea, please report to one of us in the EU team if you manage to investigate that. In the meantime, we put it in lower priority for this customer, so we're not handling it right now. But we did get this report from the customer. I think it was also on Android. Almost sure.
Yeah, I'll let you guys know. That's the one I'm trying to tackle first. And then as a side thing, like Elad and David started to update our Android Uyala plugin to support DRM. And while he was doing this, he noticed that Pablo, who had originally made the plugin, didn't actually have, continuous integration and things like that. So Elad started to update the project, and one of the requirements to get DRM to work is to update the Uyala SDK, which required a specific version of React. And when he tried to, I believe that Pablo at first was like importing a ARR or a jar version of our SDK, something like that. He wasn't actually actively pulling the SDK, the latest one. So once he did that, because of all the changes that we've been doing to the Google libraries, and we've updated the React version that we use on our SDKs, now Uyala and our SDK are not compatible. So we're facing an issue where we're telling Uyala to update to a later version of React because they're honestly using a very old version. And at the same time, the customer needs this update very soon. So what Elad decided to do is to point to an old version of our SDK, very old version, which locks the user from ever getting updates from us. But now we're having a different issue with, I believe, ProGuard rules, because the Uyala uses the EXO player as his foundation. and there seems to now be an issue playing non-DRM content. So we could play DRM, but we can't do non-DRM, and we need to be able to do both at the same time. And I will be dealing with that also. I don't know if anybody has dealt with like mismatching React libraries, or if there's any way we could, I don't know, have one on just the plugin. I doubt it, because React has a dependency on OKHTTP, and that's what conflicts. So,
are you familiar with what Ruben did recently with updating React Native?
I believe that's the reason we're having this issue, because he updated it.
Okay.
Which is not, it has to be updated. Honestly, Uyala's the people that need to fix this, but who knows how fast they will do these things. But yeah, those are the three issues I'm dealing with. The live drawer thing not showing up. I don't know if it's a new bug. The UI builder shouldn't change anything, whether it's a template or a UI builder app shouldn't change how the live drawer works. So I'm wondering if it's a new bug that we have in the latest SDK. We have the image issue, and then this Uyala thing are all pending open things that I have to do.
Okay. Ruben is currently updating the iOS bundle for React Native, the iOS version for React Native, sorry. But it might be worth, if you haven't talked to him already about the OKHTTP clashes. He dug into it for quite some time in the recent days before he switched to iOS. So it might be still fresh in his memory, and maybe he'll give you some tips that can help you advance, or maybe something that you can talk to Uyala about. So I think it's worth having a quick chat with him about it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll reach out to him. Thanks.
Cool. Merav?
I have nothing specific to talk about.
What did we update the last couple of days? Well, I have something that is related to advertising. Basically, we have a requirement from one of our clients to support some additional features of DFP that we currently don't support. So yeah, they gave us a list of requirements, and I'm now going over it. And since I bet all of you guys know it, that the DFP is integrated deeply into the SDK and to the CMS, and was not exported into the plugin systems. So every new configuration needs to come through the CMS, because this is the only place where we configure things for the SDK currently. So I'm kind of thinking how I'm going to approach this, whether it can be extended in the current infrastructure, or it has to be migrated into a plugin system, which is going to be a long and probably painful process. But it might be inevitable, actually, to export the advertising, just like it was done in analytics. So I'm currently still looking at the requirements list and trying to figure out what changes are required, and if it's really worth the effort to do it in the pluggable way. Other things that are going in the EU team. Atanas, anything you wanted to update other than what you discussed earlier?
Yeah, not really. No, I don't think so. It's well, might be a general thing about quality. Like, we are competing. Something very unpleasant happened to Quasi team. Our project was stolen by another partner. So they found this company in Belgium. They're an agency, and their work looks amazing. And basically, they're competing with us currently. At least that's my feeling, that for all the projects that we have. And they're competing on the political front, on the technical front. So like, it's kind of important to improve the quality of the app, and like, not just minor improvements, but like radical improvement, because our competitors are really good. And like we are cheaper, but we are not that, like we are not one magnitude cheaper, for example. Like we are 2 times or 3 times cheaper. So, and the clan is good. So we lost a battle, we won a battle, and there are gonna be many other battles, and like they will be fierce. So
I'm just saying that we might be even better than some of our competitors, but sometimes decisions are taken for political reasons and for other reasons. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, I'm not saying that we were 100% there, but sometimes decisions are not taken just by the quality of the.
well, no offense to no offense to anybody, mate, but like if we are to compete with a European agency, and when I say European, I mean London and like a little bit of Amsterdam, maybe Spain, like we are lagging behind in quality, and our lag is massive. Like we can say yes, we are cheaper, but like in this case, it doesn't help us much.
Yeah,
We'll
just conclude with that we're not really competing with agencies because we're not an agency. Essentially, we're trying to be a SaaS company, and it's really different. If we weren't a SaaS company, you wouldn't have a centralized SDK, and you wouldn't have all the infrastructure that we have here in Zap. So it's a different story. Let's not dwell into that.
Well, the story is that we have a working business relationship with this customer, and they're paying for dedicated resource. So like we are not exactly SaaS, and like we like the way we work.
I think that this is not a place to talk about it.
Okay.
It's not relevant to the Android.
Yeah, like I'm saying, quality is important and business is important. So that's what I'm saying.
All right.
Gil, you want to update a little bit of what you're working on?
Yeah, so last week I worked on extending our URL scheme abilities regarding UI Builder. So it's opening a UI Builder screen from the URL scheme. You can also define a data source for that screen if you want. I also worked on some bugs that we had from the last code freeze. Actually, most of them was fixed by Liberty, and it was the decision of the developer that wrote those bugs. We had like, I think 5 reverts in the last release, which is weird. That's it. Now I'm working on a new story on the UI Builder, which is the connected screen. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I guess not. It's opening a new screen on the UI Builder app with the data source that is not defined on the component itself, but from the the path that you get to it. Yeah, so that's it basically.
So what are you doing there exactly? I mean, it's implementing it on which of what component? Oh, it's on a screen level?
What do you mean on the screen level?
I'm trying to understand. You're implementing the Android side of the connected screens?
Yeah.
Because they do work partially currently. So what is this?
I will explain. Currently, what we have is that there are a couple of levels how to connect stream to create a stacked app. So currently what we have is that the target is on the data itself. Right, so we can put the data on, we can say, I want this show in the CMS to open that screen. But this, basically, when we are moving to, not moving, but part of our things is to deal with external data source providers, like things that are not interacting with applicants or CMS. In order for it to work, it requires developers' manpower. So what we're doing as a first step, basically, we are adding the option to add a target to a component. So in the UI builder, you will choose, for example, a list, and this list will be targeting let's say that this list is the all show screen. We will target the all show first component to the show screen, for example. So the idea is to give a target to a component. And this will apply for all the items, unless these items are in the list, unless these items are endpoint items. So like videos and articles and all these kind of things will be opened in dedicated screens. But everything that is a feed screen, a UI builder screen, will be opened according to the target. This is not overriding the logic of the data source that is of the connected, that is on top of the data. So if someone will put a screen to be open in the data itself, this is what will apply, but it removes the need of doing it. It allows you basically from a specific component to make sure that you're opening a specific screen. One thing that this story doesn't answer is if you want to have in the same component to open different UI builder screens. So for example, let's say that you have the whole show screen, a list of shows, and all the shows should be open in the show screen, and one specific show should be open in a special show screen. So without putting this information on the data itself, our story is not solving it. We will solve it in the future, but currently it should allow us mostly the needs that we have, without forcing the people to put specific screens in their data, or developers if we're using external data sources. So this is the story.
All right. Cool.
Another thing that we will soon be adding, maybe I'm talking here for you to just to make visibility for the roadmaps. So we're gonna add support for favorites, all the items that we have, articles, videos, whatever, from what we call the Atom model, so also from external data sources. This is one thing. And another thing that I would like to show you is a new feature that we are soon going to deploy. I will share the screen. How do I do that? Share screen. This is relevant. You can see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Cool. So basically, I don't know which app can I go now. Currently, we have a problem when using a data source provider in a way that every time we need to create a bundle. So the way, I think that maybe next week we will talk a little bit about it, because I'm not sure people are aware of how it works. But the data source provider, basically, or what we call ZAP pipes internally, is a component in the app that is JavaScript, and it's like a pipe that handles all the loads of the app. So in that way, you can basically interact with different CMSs, with different APIs, and bypassing Applicaster. But it requires creation of a bundle, of a JavaScript bundle, every time you want to add, every time you want to use it. So it's like one time for a version, and every time you're creating an update. So basically, a way to do that is we added here a logic that, if you can see, when you select a type, you have a predefined component, predefined data sources, and you can see that you can add Applicaster, you can use a collection, a category, and an Atom RSS. This is something Gil implemented also. It's also important. It still need to be tested, but basically we removed the need to use a link category. You can basically choose a web component or an HTML ticker in the UI builder and just paste the URL of the web. You don't need to create a link category in Applicaster 2 and then put the URL inside. So if you want to use web components, you can just paste the URL here. Some things related to what I did. So you have the basic one that are installed. It's Applicaster, it's collection category. We also have something that is under Applicaster, but not really Applicaster. It's an Atom RSS feed. So you can paste the XML URL directly here and use it directly in the component. Also, there is no need to use Applicaster link category. And then you have data source providers, which are plugins that are not pre-installed, that are not the default ones. And if you would like to use it, you need to take action. So here you have Reshet, which is a mistake because the creator of the Reshet plugin should have whitelisted it only for Reshet apps. This is something else that is a problem of the publisher. Well, it's a problem of the system, but it's a mistake of the publisher. But for example, if we would like to install the Televisa provider, we need to press on the plus. And this basically what it does, it generates the bundle and it saves the need of manually creating this bundle. This action takes like 2 minutes, and what it does mainly is running a CI process that is building this bundle and publishing to all the Televisa Deportes apps. And once this is published, you will get, it takes like a couple of minutes. Once this is published, you will get a notification that it's published, and it will enable you to use, it will open under the Televisa, all the Televisa options that you are now able to use. So this should be published today, tomorrow. It's hidden by a feature flag. What you see now is production, but it's not yet exposed. But it's something that I'm explaining you in order for you to explain to the project managers and whomever is complaining that they don't have a bundle that is working, and also for your use. So currently, I don't know how many of you are using it. I know the Israeli team are using it. The Latam team for sure using it, and that's it. This action takes like, I don't know, 2-3 minutes. Once this is done, you get a notification. If you want to wait till it happens, I don't know how long will it take, but or it sends a notification of a failure. If, for example, some specs of a customer is not are not passing. Another important thing that we added, this is not a fully done feature, but in order to test the data that is done by the provider, you're able to press on this link, which will let's just wait 1 second for it to finish. But anyway, meanwhile, so this opens our ZapPipe server. Okay, this is a service for developers to check that the provider that was developed returning the expected response. So you can basically see what is the response for this specific request that is done on the data source provider. So it's not bulletproof because this is browser, and browser are a little bit more solid than the connection between the app and the JavaScript libraries. But it does give you the sense of if you get the correct data. And this allows you to test all the things that you want to test. Well, visually check, let's say. Soon we will also generate a basic app that will allow the plugin developers to create this, to be able to use this app and to see that our SDK works, that all the bits and bytes are working there. But mainly, this is one part of the story that was missing by us. In order to really be able to add new provider within the system. So yeah, once this is done and the webhook is called, this will enable the here you can see that the provider of Televisa was successfully installed, and you can see that now you can add the Televisa data types, and this will use the now all the apps of Televisa Deportes can use the Televisa bundle, for example. And then you have a link to the documentation of how to add a new type, and etc., etc. So that was an overview of how to use the bundle. It should be deployed like it's on testing. We're just testing all the scenarios. Should be published publicly released in the next few days. One small thing that I would like to add, and that's the last thing. We did a refactor to the asset section. It's very visual refactor. It's not something that should affect any of the backend. We will send an announcement, but this is like a promo that I'm giving you heads up to give to the teams. We had we have some different sections in Zap that are very intensive and performance intensive, that creates sometimes request timeouts and stuff like that. So let me restart the development branch. 1 second, and I'll show it to you. So basically, I'm slowly trying to optimize some sections that are causing some issues. One of these sections was or is currently the assets one, that because it's, and this is why it bothers me a lot that project managers are adding 20 keys, because it has a lot of cost. An app shouldn't have like 20 million assets, but this is something that was created, so we needed to optimize it. And this optimization caused us to do some UI changes. I hope that the development server will be on soon. Let's wait a minute. I will try to show it to you. So basically, we changed both the SDK assets and the app assets. And I don't know, let's go to Sports Edge, whatever. It will be exactly the same on the, but we added some lazy loading there. So if you now go to the asset section, you will see that it's a little bit faster, and instead of an accordion, it's divided into sections that are lazily loaded. So you can see there are like millions of sections, and whenever you go to a section, we load it from the backend. And this helps us a lot with optimization. It's nothing but a visual change and a server change, but it's a heads up, because I know that what will happen, then some project manager / Zap user will upload the corrupted image, and then he will say, probably it's because of refactoring that is done on the UI. So the only refactor that was done is UI. It doesn't have any effect on any upload of assets, any build of an assets, any upload of zip file, whatever. So if there is a bug that that someone is suffering, it's not related to this change. So this is something to communicate to the users. That's it. for me.
All right, thank you.
Я сделал мерч с релиза, чтобы не
We're
было.
done, right?
Всё.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.